Hello, Paper Florists. Thanks so much for joining me. And thank you to Inga Peterson for the handoff on this month's Paper Flower Challenge, the Lisianthus. So I have my center, and as you learned in the previous tutorial from Inga, 3 of your admins are going to be making the Paper Flower Challenge for you this month, and each one of us are going to be doing a section of the bloom. So Inga did the center. I'm going to do the petals, and Jerry is going to do the finishing off the stem, including the calyx and the leaves. So let's get started, shall we? So I have my center, and my center is a little different than Inga's, and that's okay. We all do things a little differently, but I have the same colors that she does. I have just some strips of 180 gram cartafini paper that is 2 1/4 inches tall. Doesn't matter how long it is, you're going to cut a total of 12 petals. So we're going to start with our first 6 inner petals by cutting them. And I'm going to take the paper, I'm not going to stretch it. I want to have that stretch that's going to be inherent in the paper for shaping my petals. The one thing you do need to be cognizant of, however, is to make sure that if you do have machine lines on your paper, that is towards the bottom of your petal, not towards the top. So you wouldn't want to cut it this way with this machine line at the top, this being the top of your petal. I want to make sure that I cut it this way so that this is the top of my petal. So I cut, just as my habit, I cut 3 petals at a time. So I'm going to fold this over, and I've got a ruler here to take a look at how wide my petals are, and it's about 1 1/4 inches wide on this first round of petals. Actually, that's even a little wide. Let's go down more to 1 inch, maybe a little over 1 inch would be even a little bit better. Yeah, so this is just a little over 1 inch wide, and I'm going to cut 3 because this paper has so much stretch. And you'll need to adjust how wide your petals are based upon the paper that you decide to use. Like I said, this is 180 gram paper. I've made them with the 90 gram paper too from Cartafini. It's lovely paper, and it has more stretch to it, so you'd want to make your petals a little bit smaller. So I'm just going to cut our very typical teardrop shape petal, one that we use for a lot of flowers, including a rose. I use the same petal shape for that. So I've got 3. And I'm going to do 3 more. These are about the same width. A Lisianthus in nature has anywhere from 9, actually I think anywhere from 5 to 15 petals. So I enjoy doing mine with 12 petals. So this is our inner petals. Second round of petals, our outer petals are going to be a little wider. And this time I'm going to make them about 1.5 inches. Well, this is about 1 3/8 inches wide, because this paper has so much stretch to it. I don't want to go any wider than that. And I'm just going to cut the same way. Actually, you know what? Those are not wide enough, so let's draw back and punt. So I'm going to do it again. I am going to go wider, and those are more like the same width. So these are a full 1.5 inches wide, which makes a lot more sense. I'm actually going to use this piece because I like the way the machine line is on it. So we're going to, yes, a good 1.5 inches wide. Makes much more sense. And hey, that's the fun of what we do. It's not perfect every time. And I'll just keep those petals for my next bloom. So there's 3 of those, and I'm going to do 3 more. And I'm going to show you some coloring techniques today as well. I got a lot of questions on the Lisianthus that I posted about the coloring techniques that I used. And it's going to be super simple. So there's my 6 outer petals. And I'm going to grab a piece of scrap paper here. And I'm going to color my petals. My 6 outers, I'm going to set those aside. And here are my first 6 inner petals. And I've got some hand pastels. And you can use whatever colors you like. I'm going to probably surprise you with the colors that I'm going to use. But I've got this blender brush, and it's got a little color on it, but that's okay. And I'm going to use this for this one. This is the palette from Leah Griffith with a few added colors to it. I think I've added this gold in and one of these oranges, but the green is really pretty, but I love this. I think this is red. Yes, pearlescent red. I love that. So I'm just going to put a little bit of color on my blender brush, and I find that these blender brushes work the best for this technique. And I just want to get some color on the tips of these petals. And work it into the paper. Just on the very tip. You can see that, I think. See? And you can add as little or as much as you like. And I hope you're all staying well, staying home, and doing a lot of crafting and nurturing yourself during our time at home. We are happy as admins that we can spend some time with you and maybe help you with your paper flower journey. It's so important to us. Remember, most of us have been, that you see as admins, we've been making paper flowers for quite a while. So be kind to yourself. Make it fun. It's okay that it's not perfect. That's what makes it art. And by the way, Quinn says this all the time, nature is perfectly imperfect. Mother Nature isn't perfect either. Okay, so there's my 6 inner petals. My 6 outer petals, I'm going to do something a little different on these. Why do I keep doing this? I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we go. Okay, we're good. And I'm going to do the same thing with these. Just put some color on the tips. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You're just adding a little dimension to these flowers, to these blooms. I love the Lisianthus. It's one of my favorite blooms. I had it in my wedding bouquet. I had orange roses and purple Lisianthus. So it is one of my favorite blooms. A lot of florists will use them as an alternative to roses sometimes. I mean, on this, you could even do this with yellow on these tips or white on these tips. I notice a lot of times on the darker Lisianthus, like on the purple ones, the deep purple ones, they are more pale on the tips. Get a little far in there. Take this off and just there. And I know that some of these supplies are expensive. I know pan pastels are expensive, but I have to tell you, they go a long way. You'll buy pan pastels and they will last you for years. So I'm going to take these petals that I just colored, and I'm going to, just the outer petals, I'm going to turn them over. So I've got the color on this side, and I'm going to come in and I'm just going to apply a little bit of color, just a dab of color. I'm going to come in and blend it afterwards, but I'm just going to get some color on here on the bottoms. And this is going to give you a little dimension when you see the outside of the bloom, when you're looking at it from outside. And you can see all the petals are a little different, and that's okay. Okay, so then I'm going to come in and I'm going to blend that. I'm going to blend up the bloom. And blend up the bloom. There's those. And that's the thing about these blender brushes is, God, they blend just so well. Better than anything I've ever used. So I highly recommend them. I don't use makeup sponges or any other kind of sponge anymore because I love these. They just are seamless the way they blend. Okay, so I'll get rid of that. And I'll put this away. We're done with that. And I'm going to clean up my space a little. You can see, even though I used a scratch piece of paper, I still ended up with color all over the place, especially these pinks and reds. And here's a little tip for you. If you get that color on your table, alcohol works really well, and it dries so fast. That's why using alcohol inks on your paper works so well. You could do this with alcohol ink as well, but I prefer doing it this way. Okay, so now we're going to shape our inner petals. We're going to start with those, and I like to scissor curl them and use the back of my scissors. You can use a curling tool. I like doing this, back of my scissors and my thumb, and you're just going to pull it out at a 45-degree angle this way, 45-degree angle that way, to get that curl on the edge of your petal. And you're also going to flute just the very tip of the petal, create that lacy edge that you have. Do a little reverse cupping in the back and a deep cup on the inside of the petal. So we'll do all 6. Flute them. Reverse cup. You can just smooth that out a little with your, and nice cup on the front. And remember, the inside of the petal is where you want this color, because that's what you're going to see with these. You can see I have like a rough edge there. Go in and just smooth off that rough edge. And then bend this back a little. Apologize for the noise in the background if you hear it. My husband is working on getting our living room painted. And since we have a 100-plus-year-old house, or almost 100-year-old house, there's a lot of sanding and a lot of woodwork. So all the woodwork has to be cleaned and sanded, and thank God he does it, not me. So flute. So remember, a deep cup here at the base. And you can come back in and adjust it a little bit. And I find that this scissor curling technique, what it does is it helps break down the paper and softens up the paper a little bit. So this is a pretty simple bloom. put together. So we're going to move on to the outer petals. And remember, this is the outside, this is the inside. The color on the tips is on the inside. And we're going to do the same thing with these. You can see these are bigger petals, and flute them. Same technique on all 12 petals. Like I said, I find 12 petals the optimum number for me. You can add more, you can add less. There are big doubles and there are single versions. This is kind of like a single and a half. I'll first cut the outside and get this little frill on it. I might get this one just a little more. There we go. A few more. Same thing. And the idea of this fluting is you're just stretching the petal, stretching the paper along the tips of the petal. And then cut that. Sorry for the noise. Small price to pay. If you enjoy these tutorials that the admins are doing for you, please let us know. This is a new feature, and we're hoping that you'll find it helpful and it'll help you participate along with us. And don't forget to join the Paper Florists last Saturday of the month. I have not scheduled the one for April yet. I haven't even looked at the calendar. I'm hoping we have one more week. But I will get that on the schedule. It's a Zoom call. So all you need to do at the appointed time is to click on the link, and through the magic of technology, you will join other like minds, and we'll talk all things paper flowers. And that's where we also discuss what the next month's paper flower challenge is going to be. So if you'd like a little input on how we do that, there's your chance. So we've got all our petals formed. I'm going to take the inner petals and I'm going to put a little glue on them. Just a little, right along the very bottom, a little bit of glue. You see I have color all over my hands. This tint that I used on this petals is pearlescent. So my hands are pearlescent as well. So we have our first 6 petals. So here's my center. And my center, like I said, is a little different than Inga's, but the result is pretty much the same. The thing I think that we all do is we build up this base here, and that gives us a place to put our petals. So I'm going to place them so that they basically cup around that base. And I'm going to place them in 3s. So I'm going to come in and just, the one thing you really want to be cognizant of is making sure that your petals are all the same height. So there's 3. Actually, I will put this one on, flip this upside down and do it. There we go. So I've got my first 3 petals in there. And see how subtle, I don't know if you can see it on camera or not. See how subtle that color is? So the next 3 petals are going to go right here on where each of those petals come together. And you want to keep them the same height as the ones that are there already. Off just a little. There we go. And I find doing this from the underside works a little easier for me. So you could stop here if you wanted to, and you'd have a nice little single, beautiful Lisianthus. But I'm going to go a little further. So I'm going to set this down for a moment. And I'm going to take my other 6 petals. Put a little glue on them. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to come in and we're going to put these in the seams, in the gaps where the previous petals were. So I've got a gap there, and I want to keep it the same height. I've got a gap there where the petals joined from the previous section. And here. And then I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to come in and I'm going to put these. Make sure you get your paper glued down really well. And you can see how when you're looking at this petal, how they bulb out like that. And the Lisianthus does that. That's one of the reasons why we build up this base of the petal here, of the base of the bloom, is to create that beautiful neck of that flower. And one last petal. There we go. Now this is I would call this a double Lisianthus. Again, what you want to do is you want to come in and pinch and make sure you get this a good, that way you want to create this neck in here. And our next tutorial coming tomorrow will be from Jerry. And Jerry's going to finish up this bloom for us. But I think we have a pretty good start on our beautiful Lisianthus. And you can open it up. I usually wait until I finish the bloom before I maybe open it up. And I just make sure I've got it holding together like that, and then let it dry and finish the bloom. So thanks so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, don't forget to let us know, and we'll see you again. I'm going to hand it off to Jerry. So Jerry's going to finish up this bloom. Take it away, Jerry. It's all yours.